Welcome to Outreach Programming. I'm Mary Gerasi, and we have a fun show today. We have with us Whistling Tom. And in honor of Whistling Tom's arrival here today, I decided to start the show with a quote. Probably the most famous whistling quote of all times, from the movie To Have and Have Not from 1945, when the very sexy and sultry Lauren Bacall said to Humphrey Bogart, "You know you don't have to act with me, Steve. You just have to say anything, and you don't have to say anything, not even a thing. Oh, maybe just whistle. You know how to whistle, don't you, Steve? You just put your lips together and blow." So in honor of Whistling Tom, I brought in my film quote for you.
Well, thank you.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Mary. I think it's a little bit more than just pucker up and blow.
Well,
but it
you know
works
Hollywood,
for her.
they always negate everything, right? They couldn't give the science behind it because it would have been the entire movie.
I remember it well, too.
Ah, you do.
Oh, yeah.
Let's begin at the beginning. I know you guys are tired of me saying that, but I always like to start my interviews in the beginning. Why whistling?
Well, because it's always been a hobby. When I was a child in Baltimore, we lived in an area where there was no commercial enterprise, and my father was very strict about the rock and roll. It was not allowed in the house. It was new then, and we only had classical music, and mostly instrumental. Well, as a child with musical feelings, and he whistled, I picked up on it. So he used to sing in a band and stuff in the old days. I picked up on it, and I just did it all my life, and it's always been a way for me to escape things that are not comfortable. For instance, being in the Navy, where when you're first new in the Navy, everybody else on the boat is your boss, and they're all telling you what to do. So how do you get away from this? How do you get peace? You run up to the bow or up to the top, and you sit back and you just whistle and put that all out of your mind.
Now, you
it's
just
a great
don't
way to relax.
whistle. You have elevated whistling to somewhat of an art form. Am I correct?
Yes, but it's only because of repetition and, practice. Like any other instrument, if you practice, you get good. I've been doing it for about 40 years.
40 years.
Or more, yeah.
So you whistled in the Navy. You've whistled on boats. You've whistled internationally, nationally. Tell me about how you knew, or when you knew, that you could take this everywhere.
Well, I was tending bar in Philadelphia. I was a photographer. I had a little photography shop on South Street in Philly. And I was doing commercial photography for the local restaurants and stuff. And one of the people came in and heard me whistling. And she was very nice. I eventually married this gal. And she said, "You should come up to Dobbs, the bar there, and do this whistling." So I went up and I did some whistling for them. And they said, "Hey, how'd you like to be the daytime bartender?" So I did. And the next thing you know, I'm whistling in there all day. And people are coming in and requesting tunes, and that's when a television show local on Channel 6 heard me, and they said, "We want to do you." So they did me twice on national TV, and that went across the country. And so then I thought, well, this is something I might want to do. So I went to the local coffee shops, mostly Italian, and I said, I could go from table to table and whistle Italian songs, and I wouldn't charge you much, and it would be fun, and I could make tips, and you could pay me 50 cents a minute or something like that. And they said, sure. So that's how I got started in it.
So what kind of music were you singing in cafes? Were you doing the Beatles? Were you doing the Who?
I was doing old Italian. I was doing
not in the restaurant, but you said early on you were at the cafes with the young hipsters. I mean, what was the mood like? What era were we in?
Well, this particular bar, even though the main character, the main rock and roll guy, was George Thorogood, who was such a wonderful guy. He would come in and play all day just for the fun of it.
Wow.
To be there for the gig that night. This was before he did his album that got to be a big hit. And so he was cool. But they would come in and ask me for old-time songs, which is what I always did anyway.
You weren't doing Elvis.
No, I wasn't doing Elvis or anything complicated. I mean, Elvis is not... There's a few Elvis songs that are good for whistling.
It's a whistling tune for walking in the night.
But I like classical, I like pop, contemporary pop, things like that.
Now, we have some original recordings. Why don't we go ahead and start with it's the Boogie Woogie what?
Boogie Woogie whistle?
Yeah, we're going to play that accompaniment, and you're going to whistle. And was that more along the lines of how you started with more 1950s, 1940s type tunes?
Yeah, it was actually. I did all the old tunes, and the Boogie Woogie was always one of my favorites, so I wrote this and put it on my CD.
Wow, that was excellent.
Thank you. Thank you. Should we do it over?
Why?
Just in case it wasn't perfect. We like it to be perfect.
Well, I think it was perfect. We're
Okay.
going to move on. That was truly amazing. Now, I think it was great. Everybody got to see how your expertise comes through on the whistling, because you managed to parlay this into a money-making, international, national adventure and a film. Tell me about the movie you're in.
The documentary is entitled Pucker Up, The Fine Art of Whistling. Now, I had been going to the whistling conventions in Lewisburg, North Carolina for a few
They have
years.
conventions?
They have a convention. It's
Wow.
every April in Lewisburg, North Carolina. Now it's every other year, but it used to be every year. And people would come from all over the world to be with a whistling convention and talk whistling and whistle for each other. And then they'd have a little competition and you get a little trophy, which I have won trophies.
Whistling is
And-
serious.
Oh yeah, these are serious whistlers.
Wow.
These are not just ear whistlers. These are pucker whistlers. I mean, you have tongue and palate, and you have ventriloquial, which I cannot do. You have pucker, which has the most range, and then you have other things.
That whistle,
Whistle.
unexpectedly.
Right. There was a
Sinuses.
guy at the whistling competition one year who whistled ventriloquial. He was whistling a song. His partner put a cigar in his mouth. He's still whistling. By the time he got to the end of the song, even though he wasn't on key, he had 11 smoking cigars sticking out of his face.
Oh my gosh.
He
So
was a
whistling
Hawaiian
might be
guy.
bad for your health if you have 11 cigars in your mouth.
Yeah, I don't smoke, of course.
Of course not.
But so where was I? With
You were on the movies. You had gone to
Yeah.
several whistling conventions.
Well,
Many.
yeah, and whoever thought that there would be a documentarian show up? But she did show up this one year that I went. I believe it was 92 or 91. And there she was, Kate Davis, who has won numerous awards and Emmys, doing fabulous documentaries like Girl Talk, Transgender Revolution, other films. And she's very, very talented. And her husband, David, was there with her. And so they followed us around. Well, they happened to like my little car, which was yellow and had smiley faces. So they picked on me and they followed me around. They followed 4 other whistlers. And they came to my home afterwards in Key West. And they videotaped me there. And they got me on stage at Sloppy Joe's. And they did a whole documentary, which was really a joy to be in and has opened up some doors for me, It actually won the first prize, not only from the audience, but from the judges as well at the Orlando Film Festival 2 years ago.
Nice. So let's find out. What do people like about whistling? When I was a little kid, I used to whistle all the time. My mother could tell I was walking down the street because she could hear me before I got home. And for her, she knew I was happy. It gave her a feeling that I was a happy child. All right, do you get the same feeling?
The same feeling. And I can be as sad as anything. And if I walk somewhere whistling, people will say, oh, there goes a happy guy. You know, and that is an affirmation. That comes into me and I say, yes, I am a happy guy. You know, I go walking in the supermarket, people will come around from 2 aisles over and they'll say, is that you? Well, I had such a miserable day and now you've brightened up my day. But I think it's because whistling was the first instrument of any. I mean,
yeah.
it's a natural instrument. You know, before they had violins and anything else, people were whistling, you know, and so anyone can do it, you know, with a little practice and concentration, anyone can do it.
You don't have to buy anything.
You don't have to buy anything. All you need is to pucker up and blow, you know.
Okay, thank you, Lauren McCall. Now, if anybody could whistle, that means I could probably whistle. You have a couple of tips. I would like to explore technique with you.
Well, there's different types of whistling now. Some people will do the tongue and palate, where you put your tongue.
Let's stick with the pucker. I'm not good at that one, yeah.
Okay. Now, but you do put your tongue up on your palate.
When you pucker?
You make a pucker as if to say, ooh,
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 ooh.
and you go, you blow through it, okay? You got a little whistle there,
Whoa.
okay? That's it. Now, that's the start, and that's all the start you need.
Right.
On my website, there is Basic Whistling 101 that you could click on and get a whole sheet.
We'll put the sheet in there, the information, okay.
But and it tells you, there are certain words like tucka, puka, mucka, akka, oodle.
Hey,
you know,
I don't know if we're allowed to say those words before 11. They sound kind of
you know, if you say like oodle,
Oodle.
okay? So if you oodle, and you whistle, oodle, oodle, the same tongue action, oodle, 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 say oodle.
Oh my gosh, oodle.
Now whistle and say oodle. Yeah, well, it
This
takes
is
practice
fun.
like anything else. It's a 20-year instrument, just
Now,
like a
see,
flute.
I grew up similarly to you with classical music. My mom played classical violin up until college. So I do a rousing rendition of the 1812th Overture, of course, the world's hardest one, and it's terrible. But it's funny. It's a funny song to try to whistle to.
Sure.
So do you encourage people to find something obtuse, bizarre, fun to have? I mean,
Well, they've got to have fun doing it.
it can't be Mary Had a Little Lamb every single time, right?
No, well, you have to develop your notes first. So you need to be able to do the scales. Now it's doodle 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 doodle. You want to make a song have some really
Punch
good.
it out, right?
Yeah. It's the tongue. Doodle doodle.
Oh my God, I am not good at this, but it's still fun to do.
It is fun to do. A vibrato adds a lot. And there's a couple of
Demonstrate a
different ways
vibrato.
of
Let's see the
vibrato.
vibrato.
Now, I'm not really partial to the, that's
Sounds
tongue.
like sci-fi horror music, right? That vibration. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
A lot of whistlers do that. For me, a good vibrato comes from the diaphragm, just like when you sing.
Right. Wow. Totally different.
Slow and mellow. I try to whistle in lower registers because many whistlers are so high and shrill, it's uncomfortable to listen to.
That was nice. I like that range. Now, I also noticed that you were inhaling and breathing at the same time out. Is that called cyclical breathing?
No,
No.
it's just technique.
Technique.
It is being able to, for instance, at the whistling convention, there were 60-some whistlers. There were only 9 who whistled both in and out and were able to maintain pitch and tone. Because most people lose the pitch or the, when they switch, okay?
It
And
rhymes. I love
they
it.
lose the pitch when they switch. That's right, Mary.
We need to write that on the website. Go ahead.
Okay. So there were only 9, and there were only 4 of us who were able to do it really good.
Yeah, that's
Now,
amazing
why
to
I
see you
developed
do
that
it.
technique, I don't know.
And it
I
keeps
never
you moving through the
consciously did
music
it.
consciously,
But
right?
it gives you the ability to do violin tunes.
Yes.
Because it's non-stop.
So you've perfected your technique. You got out of the Navy. You were whistling on there to just make yourself feel safer and comfortable. What happened? You went to the restaurants. You started doing the Italian venue. Oh, where'd
So-
you go from there?
I started attending bar. Then they put me on Evening Magazine, then on PM Magazine. then I thought, well, I should be able to do this. And I started going around to the schools and whistling and teaching little kids how to whistle for like career days and things like that, just for the fun of it, you know. Then when I decided to move to Key West and buy a boat, and I had a 44-foot sloop that I lived on for years, and there I was a realtor selling timeshare, which is simple, but what I did on the side was go to Mallory Square, which everyone has heard of Mallory Square, and you sit down there with your drum on your lap and you make music and you put out the tip jar, and that was always so much fun.
Can you give me a little demo and explain what that is? Because I've heard this now, and explain that.
This is a castanet, and they usually have a clapper on each side, and you go like that. But I took it apart and put both clappers on the top. I stick it in my shoe so that I have another little rhythm
Oh, how neat.
section.
How neat.
And then this, when I left the job there selling the timeshare, I took one of the office water cooler jugs with me. This is a 2.5-gallon jug. I find it easier to use. I put a cloth bag around it because it sounded too tinny. And then I put my yoga strap around it so I could stand up on the street corners and,
Which you have done.
and tap on it. I went all over Europe with this. This is a dumbek. This is a Turkish drum. It's called a dumbek. It's nickel-plated bronze.
Beautiful.
It has a great sound, but it's very tinny also. So in order to have a little variety, I took the office water cooler jug drum with me, and I would stand on the street corner with the tambourine, with the tapper, the clapper, and the jug drum.
I'm going to move this so we can get a shot of it. There
And
you
I
go.
would do, the rings come in really handy for playing this thing,
Nice.
you see, and you can get a lot of different.
So can you give us a little made-up rendition of whistling and tapping and using the castanet? Just
Okay, how
make up
about,
something. One-man band.
But you know,
Unbelievable.
When you
You're
do
a
this-
one-man band. Look at that.
if I need to concentrate, I have to close my eyes because as soon as I look at the audience, if there is one, and somebody goes, I lose where I am, I'm gone, I lose everything. you know?
Stage fright. I know. I have the same problem. So technically, we're talking probably, you know, something recycled, something you come with, a set of lips. This is not an expensive craft at all.
Right. This you could get anywhere, and if you lose it, you go get another one. For nothing. You
For
know?
nothing. Well, you're amazing. I can't believe it. Now, we're going to be winding up shortly. We're going to have a couple of more interesting things we're going to share with you. We're going to do one more song in the classical music realm, but I wanted you to tell me the story about your trip to Germany. That is such an amazing story.
I had
Now,
such a blast.
how did you get to Germany? What happened? How did you perform there?
Well, I had this friend in Key West named Love 22, who is a numerologist, and he goes around folding up. He has these $22 bills with his picture on it, and he talks to people about the significance of 22 to them, and he folds it up into a ring and slips a 22-carat ring on their finger, and then he sells them a bunch of those bills, and he has put 2 kids through college. He's got a house in Montreal and one in Key West. He's done great
Wow.
with this all these years, and he says, Tom, you should come to Europe with me. You'd love it over there. I know the ropes. Don't worry. I thought, well, I'd really like to go. I'm 58 years old. I've never been to Europe, so okay, well, maybe I'll go. So I got on a plane. He got on a different plane. I wound up in Dusseldorf. He wound up way up in Sweden somewhere, but our agreement was to meet in Frankfurt at the youth hostel. You don't have to be in a youth to stay in a youth hostel.
Thank God.
Okay?
Cheap living, yes.
And it was right there on the river. It was a wonderful place. So there we were, and then he showed up, and then the two of us, we went all over Europe. We went to Sweden, Norway, Denmark, Belgium, France, Germany, Italy, Switzerland, Austria, Liechtenstein,
Wow.
even the Netherlands, where there are nether people. And we had a great time there. I'm telling you, they were so hospitable. For instance, for instance about hospitality, before I tell you about what it was like, there was festivals everywhere. I get to Wilhelmshaven, which is northern Germany. America used to have a Navy base there, and the Germans chased us out a few years back, and all the local citizens there are so sorry because the money went too when the Americans went.
Yeah.
So, but they still love Americans. So I went there for this festival, this busker festival. A busker is a street performer. Many people don't know that.
Yes.
It's a person who performs on the street. So they have busker festivals all summer long throughout Europe, and they don't coincide so that you can go to all of them. They time it. They
Nice.
communicate the different
You
countries.
could stay busy all summer long.
You
Make some
stay
money.
busy. It's like a route. I
Yeah.
didn't know that when I got there, but when I met these buskers at the youth hostel in Frankfurt, they told me,
Gave you
hey,
the
stick
plan.
with us.
Yeah, excellent.
So then we went to all the busker festivals, but this one in Wilhelmshaven, I'm sitting on the street corner, I'm just doing some songs. Up comes a handsome couple, suit, gray hair, super handsome, man and his wife. He says, where will you stay tonight? We love what you're doing. And I said, well, I don't know. He said, well, you're welcome to stay at our house. So I said, well, come back later at dusk and get me, and I'd be glad to take your invitation. So they took me home. She cooked up the Wiener Schnitzel, which I found out was some kind of veal, breaded veal or something. No big deal, but it was delicious. And they said, you will stay here at our house while you're in Wilhelmshaven. It's going to rain tomorrow, he says. We believe it's going to rain tomorrow, and if it does rain, the festival will be postponed, so you just stay in the house. We don't want you to get sick. So for 3 days, it did rain. And I stayed in the house, and she was saying, you will eat this, read this, look at this, do this. And he was inviting all these people, little groups, 5, 6 people at a time, coming in, and I'm doing whistling shows for this guy. So, but he was great. His
You
name
felt
was
like
Klaus.
an indentured servant, huh?
Yeah, his name was Klaus, and he was really nice, and they were wonderful people. But when the rain stopped, I'm out on the street corner with my Doombeck,
You're Doombeck.
doing a show, and along comes this guy with this sign, big, painted on wood. It says Thomas der Pfeiffer, aus USA, Key West, Florida. Big production, fancy edges. And I said, well, where'd this come from? He said, the Burgermeister asked me to give it to you. And I said, what's a Burgermeister? Someone who makes good hamburgers? He said, no, that's the mayor. In your country, it is the mayor. And I said, well, why would the mayor give me this? And he said, you don't know you're staying with the mayor? And his wife? I said, no, they never told me.
Oh, so you had no idea.
Yeah,
But what a wonderful reception. It sounds like you had wonderful receptions worldwide.
I've had a great time all over. I wore the belt bag with the American flag. My friends in the Keys said, don't wear that. They don't like Americans, but on the
Who
contrary.
couldn't like you, Tom? Who doesn't like a whistler?
That's right. Whistlers were everywhere.
That's good.
The only bad thing that happened while I was over there, I get to Geneva, and I'm on the corner doing a thing, and a guy comes up and says, how did you do last week? And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, last week, the week before I got there, they had a big whistling convention.
Oh, you missed the whole thing.
I missed the whole thing, but I did have a great time over there.
And we don't want to miss this part of the show because we're going to have to wrap up shortly. If we could go to the classical music segment, you're going to show us how you do that as well.
Right, Jesus, Joy of Man's Desiring
One of my favorites.
by Johann Sebastian Get Back Bach. He's great.
I love classical music. Again, I was raised with it, reels and reels and reels of it, and it's such a lovely, lovely job to take something that we consider childful, playful, and simple like whistling and turn it into an art form. You've done amazing. I love your stuff.
Thank you very much.
And I'm so grateful that you were on the show. Let me ask the final question. What's in store for you now, Tom? Where are you going? All over the world? You got some shows, you got some festivals. What's going on?
Well, the documentary, Pucker Up, The Fine Art of Whistling, that has been going to all the film festivals around the world. Just recently, it had its debut in New York State. It'll be coming down this way soon.
Oh, great.
We were included in the South by Southwest Film Festival, and we took some honors there, but we took first prize in Orlando. So that's going to be going around. And of course, my website, there are people from all over the world. You should read some of the comments that people make from all over the world Even got an email from Armando Hurley, who was the lead singer in the Funkadelics. He told me he wants me to come to Australia and whistle in their new CD.
I would love to hear you do a P-Funk album. How would that be?
You know what
We've
I'd like
got
to
the
do for
funk.
you? If I could
that
do
would be
just
amazing.
a little short rendition of the 12 Days of Christmas.
Absolutely. We're going to end on that.
Okay.
And I'd like to thank you for joining me and Whistling Tom for today's show. And we're going to end with Whistling Tom again. Take us out, Tom.
Well, I would like to do a Christmas song for everybody out there, and I have done an abbreviated rendition of the 12 Days of Christmas, so we don't take up too much time. It goes like this. Whistling is the human body. I mean, it must have been, of necessity, the first musical instrument. Music of the whistling comes from your heart. It comes from your mind. It comes from the feelings, the thoughts that pass by that you want to get out without walking around talking to yourself. So you whistle.
Lazy bones, loafing through the day. You always seem to find the easy way, moving like you're rolling grave. Never heard a word I say.
All over America, entire families are backsliding. We're no longer just sedentary, we're stationary, and that's bad news for your bones. At any age, bones need weight-bearing activity to grow strong and stay strong. So go outside, take the steps, play with the dog. Just get up, get out, get moving.
Never keep your bones that way.
A public service message from the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons.